I'm sure this video needs no intro because you know what 2D parallax is. You know, when the player starts moving, the backgrounds move and the foregrounds move depending on where the game camera is, and it creates a 3D effect. So how do you use this plugin? Let's go down to sprites and let's go to my environments, and I've got the backgrounds and the foregrounds. In the foregrounds here, I've got the background, far midground, midground, near midground, and here in the parent, I'm going to add the parallax manager. And everything is set up. I just got to tick is background because it is a background. And if I click play, now there is parallax automatically in the scene. And let's do the foreground. I'm going to click my foreground, add component, parallax manager, and this time it is not a background, so I'll leave that unchecked. And now you can see at the very bottom, the foreground is now working. So how does it work? Well, if I go down here, all you got to do is make sure the layer that is furthest from the player is at the very top of the child hierarchy. So you can see background is at the very top because that layer is furthest from the player, and foreground is at the very top because that is also furthest from the player, because these two here get nearer and nearer to the player. So let's go over a few settings here. You've got intensity. If I click play, I'm going to change the intensity of the near midground. You can see that's this layer. If I set it to 0, then it does not move at all comparing to the camera. If I set it to 1, then it moves at the exact same speed as the ground here. So of course you can make these any values you want. And you can mess these up as much as you want, and you can see the scene is kind of messed up. If I want to reset it, I just got to click set intensities and it will put them back in ascending order and it will average them out. And here you've got is background. If I turn that off, you can see that the background now acts like a foreground, but we want it to act like a background, so I'll turn that to true. And you've got your height multiplier. If I were to set it to 1, and if I start jumping, you can see that the backgrounds move. I can show it in scene view. You can see how all the backgrounds move there. So I'm going to set this to 0.2. That's probably a better value. You can see it's quite subtle, but it does add a vertical effect to the parallax. Now the last thing is the anchor down here. And when you start the plugin, the anchor is on the main camera's position. So if you start the scene with the main camera up here, well, the anchor of all the parallax will be centered around this position. And of course, if your camera spawns up here, then your anchor for the parallax will be on this position. And sometimes you want your anchor to be consistent throughout the whole project. So that's where you can drag in your own consistent anchor. So I'm going to drag in this game object and it's just centered around 0, 0. And if I were to click play, you can see I can move the anchor and it will move where the parallax is anchored from. Before getting into the finer details, I'm using a boogie light, and this is actually using my asset Light Flicker Ultimate, and you can get this on the Unity asset store. So the last thing I'll mention about this asset is the sprites themselves have a saved anchor on them. So if I were to get the background, if I were to move it down, now the background has now a new anchor to go from. So it saves the anchor for every single sprite when you start the scene, so you can move these to any position and then it will do the parallax from that position. So you can get the script for free. I put a GitHub link in the description so you can use it for yourself.